has been a while since I did a Cuphead challenge video, so here we are. You are probably confused by the title, and I'll be honest, I was confused too, but we'll get to that in a little bit. My sister joined to help me to do this challenge, so shoutouts to her. Anyways, can we beat Cuphead, Don't Deal with the Devil, and the delicious last course? Well, 2 players are controlling 2 characters. Let's find out.
Beow! Beow!
Ah! Alrighty then, time for some explaining. To put it simply, one Joy-Con controls one player and the other Joy-Con controls player 2. After one boss or one level, we switch controllers. And for a more complex layout, this is a graph. These are the players and these are the controller layouts. The characters represent who is controlling the player. I hope that made sense because it will be in the corner of the video from now on. Oh, and we're gonna start a new save file and we're allowed to use Jimmy. And finally, we are allowed to use the remove player 2 glitch. With all the rules out of the way, let's get started. After Cuphead gambles his and Mugman's souls away to the devil, we are now tasked with getting the 19 soul contracts by tomorrow midnight. Elder Kettle gives us a potion and we go through the tutorial just to get a coin. Run and guns are the hardest levels in this challenge because we have unpredictable movement choices and we can't focus on 2 players at once. And we keep forgetting that we're controlling both players. Other than that, the tutorial was a little difficult because of that one jump. But we head out and gather some coins from Mac and we head to the shop. Player 1 purchased Roundabout while player 2 got Chaser. Let's go fight some bosses. The root pack was the root pack. It was hard to tell who was who, but here is my biggest tip for this challenge. In some phases, you might want to focus on one controller at a time. Like we are dealing with Sal's Sputter. All we really have to do is jump, so let's focus on that. In the second phase, make sure that you're focusing on moving and don't ever stop shooting. And then Ollie will go down easy. Jaunty, thank you Glitch1 New. And another important tip is to communicate with the other players so that you don't die. And to yell at each other constantly. And it helps when you say, "Hey, can you parry?" Thanks. So it is important to communicate with your teammate. Other than that, the root pack is done for. Cuphead was a little harder to control because we're still not used to the controls. And we are mostly worrying about one character, causing us to die. But with some communication and focusing on one player per attack, Cuphead's a very easy boss. The grave takes some teamwork and it relies on dashing, but other than that, we're good. Ribby and Croaks was the first hard boss in this challenge. First, Ribby's fist attack, we have to stop moving and duck and shoot. The second phase was not too hard, as the only thing you need to worry about is moving. We can't really rely on each other jumping for the third phase for the frogs and the tigers. So we have to worry about getting the bowls. so that we can make it past this phase. But this is the first boss where we pull out Jimmy. Another tip is to stay calm. Sure, there are times where you'll be mad at each other, but just work together, and it will eventually work out. The mausoleum was the pain in my existence, because my sister is not good at parrying as the cup rose. And we have failed over and over again. And half an hour later, yes, I am not joking, half an hour later, we finally got Super Art 1 and we got Miss Chalice.
They ask you how you are, you just have to say that you're fine when you're not really fine, but you just can't get into it because they would.
We gathered some coins and we headed to the King's Leap, and the king hired us as a hitman to his residence. Why? I'm not gonna go into too much depth with the King's Leap bosses, but the puns were painful because they were moving too fast, and we had trouble paying attention to both characters. So then we made a plan, one stays on one side, the other on the other, and after a little while, we got our coins, we headed back to Inkwell 1. At first, I and my sister were scared about the plain bosses, but then we found out that this time, these levels are the saving grace for all of eternity. All you really have to do is never stop shooting and just focus around moving. And if you want to parry, tell your teammate to parry. And this fight is easy peasy. I never thought I would say that in my life, considering this is Cuphead after all. Cagny Carnation was a little difficult because you had to pay a lot of attention on what's going on screen. And it was hard to pay attention to the characters and deal with this mess. The biggest problem was Cagny bursting his head on one half of the screen because the attack would almost hit either player every single time. And don't get me started on the final phase. You have to stay up the platforms. We have to dash as Chalice because the floating platforms, and we have our second greatest enemy. But other than that, it was a cakewalk. Oh, and by the way, the second greatest enemy are the platforms. This level introduces us to one of the most evilest, vilest roadblockers in the game, and that is the run and guns. These levels combine what makes the bosses a pain in the brain and cranks it up to 11. We can't be careful in these levels because moving two characters at the same time is difficult enough on its own, but having to move, jumping, dashing, etc. through this level, trust me, when I say that this is the easiest one out of all the running guns. We tried going through Treetop Trouble. It did not have the right supplies, so we'll go back to this level. P.S. I was writing the script as I was playing the game, and we did not go back to Treetop Trouble. So just wanted to clear that up. Now that we finished Inkwell Isle I, let's go to Inkwell Isle II. Once we are in Inkwell Isle II, we get the bombs, and yeah, that's it. Let's go fight some more bosses. Jimmy the Great was thankfully another one of the plane levels. And sure, it was a little hard moving around, but here's my philosophy for all the plane levels in Cuphead. Period. Never stop shooting, communicate with your teammate, dodge, not use the small plane, and finally, dodge. The attacks are not too bad. The hardest phase was definitely the Cuphead phase, or yet again, as I like to call him, Cuphead. The bullets are very tricky to dodge, but other than that, there's not really that much to Jimmy. Beppy the Clown. Beppy was another harder boss in the game, but it was a little simpler compared to the bosses later in the game. The attacks were a little difficult to dodge, and the final phase was the hardest because the penguins can be cancelled on Twitter. No wonder why they work for a clown. Anyways, the main focus for this level is to communicate with your teammate. Other than that, the boss is done. We gather a few coins, head to Pork Rind for some items. Now, let's fight some more bosses. Dang, we are on a streak with easy bosses. Thankfully, Wally Warbles is another plane fight. So, you just have to follow the plane rules, and I'm gonna repeat myself. Never stop shooting, dodge, communicate with your teammate, and don't use the small plane, dodge, you get the rest. Other than that, the fight was not too difficult. After Wally, we went to Funfair Fever and gathered some parries to get another coin, so let's continue. The Baroness was painful because all of the randomized bosses. The gumball is pathetic. The candy corn was painful. The waffle was easy enough. The muffin sucked. The jawbreaker can go kiss my behind. And the Baroness herself was the most difficult phase because of the moving level and those stupid heads. Like, why do they have to home on the players? And like you would have guessed, this was painful, doing the whole controller swap thing. But after a few minutes or hours, I don't know, I don't keep track of time, we are done with this boss. Remember when I said that the run and gun levels are gonna be harder as they go on? Well, technically it's gonna be the final run and gun we're gonna be doing in this challenge, but the upside down mechanic is confusing on its own. But with this challenge, you see where this is going. But this level's not too difficult if you just communicate with your teammate. We beat the level, we're not doing another run and gun from this point on. Other than that, we got 5 coins, we headed to the shop, we got the automatic parry for my sister and me, in case if my sister or I get confused on the mausoleums. Mausoleum 2. Now, this mausoleum is not as hard as the previous one. It was just a little confusing, but with the automatic parry, we got Super Art 2, so enough said. Upon reaching Grim Matchstick, we've used Jimmy without hesitation because this boss was gonna be a more painful boss. And guess what? We destroyed him on the first try. Yes, I am confused too. Then again, we did have a lot of health and Cuphead was dead for most of the fight, making it easier to focus on one player. And other than that, we destroyed Grim Matchstick first try somehow. What a weird world we live in. Now that we have finished Inkwell Isle II, let's go to Inkwell Isle III.
You like jazz?
Rumor Honeybottoms was another one of those bosses that heavily relies on platforming, and it was a pain for me and my sister. The boss was difficult because we had to pay attention to what is going on in the players, and to worry about the honey waiting to gobble us up for lunch. The hardest part about this boss was the second phase, because of Rumor's homing pink attack. So eventually we used our final wish, and then we finally made it into the final phase. It was not too hard, we just had to dodge the saw and bullets, and we finally passed this boss. Captain Brinybeard made me regret using the wish during Ribbing Croaks and Grim Matchstick. This fight was so difficult, and at most times my PC went like this. Hey look, we're doing one of this boss. Wanna see me die? Boom. And that was basically the worst part about this fight. Most of the time, I and my sister had to plan all of the attacks so we did not screw it up. The worst phase was the first few phases because of all the havoc that is going on. And thanks Terra Exans, sorry if I'm pronouncing it wrong, for telling me that this is a barrel. And after 2 times of my PC crashing, this fight is finally over. Calabaria was thankfully a plane boss. This plane boss is a little harder, sure, but here's a few tips. In the second phase, don't go on top of Calabaria because you can't shrink in this challenge very often. The hardest phase was the second phase because of those stupid eels, but just follow the plane rules. And by now, if you were listening, you should know them, and you should be good. Sally's stage play was another kick in the belly. The problem this time around is that Sally is all over the place. In the first phase, it's not too bad. You just have to pay attention or communicate with your team. The second phase is the first phase, but harder. The babies just suck. The third phase is not too hard. Just make sure to roll during the wave. If either of you has smoke bomb or chalice, it's just easier to roll or just dash instead of parry the star. The final phase was a heartbeater, but just pay attention and you'll destroy Sally's reputation. The final mausoleum. For some reason, me and my sister beat this first try, but all you really have to do is parry, or if you suck, just take out pea sugar. And pea sugar, you know where this is going. Never in my life would I thought that Dr. Frickin' Call would be one of those bosses that is a saving grace. Yes, you do have to communicate with your teammate, and yes, this boss is hard normally. And the hardest part, no hesitation, is the final phase. But just get good at this boss. Then the third phase will just soon look like a cakewalk. And just like that, we just beat Dr. Call without a issue? What? Wonder Woman. Now this is what I call a challenging boss. Like Bradybeard, I had a plan for every attack. The first phase goes like this. Cherry bombs go to the edge of the screen with roundabout and dash. Warner is about to go to the other side of the screen, jump. The second phase was the hardest phase because of the fire and those stupid bottle caps. But just try to move around the screen. The screen! Why am I so dumb? And you will make it to the final phase in no time. Just be careful, and this fight is done for. The Phantom Express. This fight was one of those easier ground bosses because of our weapons. If one of the players just guard one side of the carts while the other guards the other, the pumpkins are just basically screwed. The second phase was a cakewalk, the third phase was easy because we had homing weapons, and the final phase is just the panic phase, but just communicate with your team, and this fight is over. Now that we have finished Inkwell Isle III, let's go to Inkwell Hell. So before we go into King Dice, let us gather some coins, and now we're ready. Oh boy, King Dice. Out of all the bosses in this game, this level took the longest. Wonder why? Some of the bosses are unplayable because of the moving platforms, so we will only do the essential bosses to do. And I strongly recommend that either of you have Smoke Bomb or Chalice. Chip's Bedigan is the most pathetic ground boss in the game. The method my sister and I use is to duck and say, "Roll!" And to which my sister and I use our dash defenses. And just use the homing weapons to destroy Chip's Bedigan, and he's done for. Fear Lap. This is a plain boss. There's literally 2 attacks, and it is parryable. Do I need to explain further? Pirouetta. This is another fight where I utilize the dash defense. Like Chips, I say, roll, and to which my sister and I roll. Pirouetta with the roundabout is automatically dead. King Dice. So if you're wondering why me and my sister were struggling with this boss, well, 2 things. The dice is my 3rd greatest enemy, and I was trying to roll. But I can put an entire compilation of me rolling and failing. So now you understand my pain. King Dice himself was also a pain because of the cards. And remember when I said that I can't really rely on parrying? Well, I was not kidding here. Here I have to go behind the hand to not take damage. So what's the catch? Well, King Dice can do the same side twice at times, so you are going to have to stock up some HP. After hours of suffering, we finally beat King Dice. We are finally here. The devil himself. After rejecting his offer, he turns on insane mode. So now we have to take him down. The first phase was literally one hell of a time for the wrong reasons. The stupid goat arms were the most harmful attack other than the dark magic, and it will instantly kill us. But the spider head was the second easiest attack yet. Just behind the snake attack. But that was not the worst phase. No. The worst phase was the second to last phase. Because it has our second greatest enemy, the platforms. And it was very hard keeping track of the characters and all the stuff going on the screen. And as this level suggests, it's one hell of a time for the wrong reasons. But just know that you're never gonna get it the first, second, 56th try, but eventually you will finally defeat Satan using finger guns. Cuphead and Mugman have burnt all the contracts, and now we have freed everyone in the Inkwell Isles. Now, let's go help Chalice get the Wonder Tarts. But first, let us celebrate. Alright, back in Inkwell Isle IV. Without any further ado, let's fight some bosses. Glumstone the Giant. There is a crap ton of stuff happening during this level. The first phase is chaotic because of the gnomes. Thanks, don't roast me, you should not roast trash. And our second greatest enemy, the platforms. So yet again, we suffered. But the second phase was easier, just confusing. The hardest phase has to go to the final phase where Glumstone decides that he wants to eat us. And we meet Jeff once again. Say hi, Jeff! But Jeff's phase has the skeleton platforms. And it is difficult, but with Chalice, she can parry the tongue and move more efficiently. So other than that, we have defeated Jeff, and Glumstone should still have to take my advice from last time. And we get the gnome berries! The Moonshine Mob! This boss is the easiest boss in the DLC, and this fight really proves it. In the first phase, you really have to dodge. Just stay together and have a homing weapon. That proved to be very efficient. The second phase, you have to pull out the roundabout and do the whole roll thing. And the jitterbug, thank you Blueberry Fanta, will be dead. The third phase is pretty simple. You just have to pay attention to the projectiles and the tongue. Just never stop shooting, and the final phase is just pathetic. Other than that, the Moonshine Mob is defeated, and we get distillery dough. There we go. Yeehaw! Esther Winchester. Unfortunately, it's the only plain boss in the DLC. But it is a plain boss after all, and I am pretty sure those people who have watched the entire video up to this point know the plain rules. The most difficult phase is the final phase, because all the sausages and how ridiculous they can be at times. But other than that, Esther becomes someone's dinner, and we get the desert lines.
What the dog doing? What the dog doing?
I was worried about the Howling Aces because of the plane, and it was painful, but we got fit through phase 1. And phase 2 is a joke. Just pull out your homing weapon, and we automatically move on to the final phase. And yet again, me and my sister broke our necks trying to pay attention to the screen. And my sister really sucked at jump dash. But just be careful, and you will defeat the Howling Aces and get the Pineapple Mint. The Adventure Time's Ice King grandfather. Fun fact, I didn't really watch much of Adventure Time, but who cares? Also known as Mortimer Freeze, was one of those bosses I was really worried about, but turns out it was not so bad. The first phase was just shoot, and phase 2 was a little more difficult. The snowman is just rolling around at the speed of sound. Got places to go, gotta follow my rainbow. And those stupid popsicles. But the final phase was the phase I was worried about the most because of the platforms. But it's not so bad. The attacks are literally weak. And just like that, we have beat Mortimer Freeze. We got the final ingredient, the icy sugar cubes. Before we go to Saltbaker, who is totally not suspicious, let's do the optional bosses. Angel and Demon. I just found out that Demon's name was not Devil, but still, this boss was not really too bad, just annoying. And this is where we started going like, screw player 1 or 2, let's focus on either players. And this boss became a joke because of turn, done. Alright, now let's finish the King's Leap. The Troll Knight was very painful because my sister sucked at parrying. Yeah, you know where this is going. Trust me when I say this, but we had to take it very slowly because of how terrible my sister was at parrying. We took more time than we should, but eventually, we beat the knight. The bishop was annoying because the bishop moves his head a lot and you just have to go delit the candles or something so you can parry the bishop. The fight was not too bad, just have Chalice with you and you're good. The Rook was very annoying because, yet again, my sister sucks at parrying. And I was like, screw it, I am Chalice. The lightning was very annoying, but it wasn't too bad. As Chalice, you can stay above the ground, so the Rook is done for. The Queen was one of the most annoying bosses, just behind the Knight. But it was one of the more painful bosses, and yet my sister made it worse. And do you know why? But soon enough, we finally beat the Queen, and the King pays us for killing his wife. Yet again, what a lovely messed up husband. Now that we got all the ingredients and beat all the bosses, we find out that Saltbaker had a suspicious basement, and oh boy, he's evil! Who would have guessed? Oh, and he's attempting to turn Mugman into the Wonder Tart. But now, we have one more boss to defeat. Here we are, Chef Saltbaker. And let me just say that this boss was the literal definition of hell. The first phase was one of my concerns because of everything Saltbaker is throwing at you. The limes, the sugars, the berries, and the dough. And pair that up with the control setup. For a good portion of the boss, my sister thought that she was jumping as Chalice. But fortunately, phase 2 is not so bad. Just be a little careful. The same thing can go with phase 3, but then there's the final phase. Exactly the phase I was worried about. We can't have more than one player alive because of this phase. Saltbaker's heart bounces around the screen, and you can parry it. And that is why we lost so many attempts. But finally, controlling 2 players at once started to finally click with me at this point. Unfortunately, it was on the final level. And that same attempt, we finally beat Chef Saltbaker. Now that we beat Chef Saltbaker and saved Mugman, we can finally escape the falling bakery. And Saltbaker gets community service? Bro killed sentient ingredients, threatened to use sentient cups as serving dishes, and attempted to wipe a sentient mug out of existence with the intention to control the afterlife and manipulate it.
They ask you how you are, you just have to say that you're fine when you're not really fine, but you just can't get into it because...
Just for community service? Oh well. Saltbaker soon rebuilds his bakery, and now he is good. But anyways, we beat the game! Now that we have beat everyone in Cuphead, it is now time to answer the question. Can we beat Cuphead, Don't Deal with the Devil, and the delicious last course, while 2 players are controlling 2 players? Yes, but this was always possible. It was just a matter of communication and teamwork, and me and my sister thought it would be fun to try it out. Anyways, shoutouts to my sister because she suffered with me, and I hope you all enjoyed the video. And thanks for those people who sat down and watched the entire video. Shoutouts to them. But anyways, have a nice summer, and I'll see you in a month. Da 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 ba da